Good afternoon. The subcommittee will come to order. I want to thank everyone for being here today to discuss the digital GI Bill project. Notice I didn't say to discuss the fantastic way that this project has been completed on time and on budget. That was not in the script. We have to approach this in a nonpartisan way, and I'm incredibly thankful for Mike being here and all the rest of my Democrat colleagues for really adhering to that tradition we have here in this subcommittee, where we clearly separate politics, and this is one of the reasons why we have to. During the subcommittee's joint hearing with the Subcommittee on Technology Modernization in July of 2023, we received an update about the digital GI Bill, and we voiced our concerns about how the project has been designed and implemented during the Biden-Harris administration. But let's be super clear, these contracts were signed under the previous administration. I'd like to repeat my fellow chairman Matt Rosendale's words during his opening statement last July, where he said, "I believe the concept of the digital GI Bill remains sound, but the bureaucracy managing the project is floundering." And since then, it's clear that the bureaucracy managing this project has negatively impacted the success of the digital GI Bill and has cost the taxpayers hundreds of millions of dollars and ultimately negatively impacts veterans. We're here today because the report issued by the VA Inspector General on August 28th, 2024, and it confirms many of the fears that were expressed on my side, you know what, it's actually our side of the aisle, about how this project was being managed under the current administration. According to OIG, the project was hindered from the outset because the VBA failed to include staff who had, this is a direct quote, VBA failed to include staff that had required technical expertise to develop performance work statements, which outlined the necessary steps to complete the platform development and therefore drive contract requirements. Further, the OIG specifically mentioned that the initial contract requirements were, and I quote, unclear or unrealistic. This report highlighted the lack of accountability of leadership at the VA and the design flaws that will continue to cost the American taxpayer and hundreds of millions of dollars. VA employees working on this project did not have the proper expertise to run the program, and the VA failed to follow traditional contract implementation guidelines. It's just that simple. Many of these same issues have been raised and investigated by this committee in previous GI Bill failures in 08, 10, and 18. And frankly, gentlemen, it's embarrassing that we have to do this again. It is professionally embarrassing, and anybody that has anything to do with this project should be personally embarrassed. Those are everybody here and the people that decided not to show up. So the life cycle cost is projected by MITRE, who I will note refused to testify today. That's the empty chair next to you, and answer questions about their involvement in these issues to be up to $2.7 billion. That is over $1 billion more than the estimate was given to Congress in 2021. This project, which was originally projected to be finished at the end of 2024, will not even be done until 2026. During today's hearing, VA must be accountable for the 2-year delay and doubling the cost and explain how they're going to get the GI Bill back on track. Student veterans deserve a modern system that they can count on. Taxpayers deserve to know that their investment is worthwhile, and that's why we're here, period. What is amazing to me is that any private business or non-government sector of the American economy, if this were to take place, they all would have been fired. They all would have never been hired again by anybody with any level of sanity or business sense or fiscal responsibility, or someone in this case who actually cares about the people they say they care about, and that's the student veterans. If civilians were sitting there, they would walk out this door and their stuff would be in a cardboard box from their desk, and they would be fired, and rightfully so. And I'm really looking forward to hearing from the OIG. I had a meeting with them for like an hour going through these results, because this is on one hand so incredibly complicated, and on the other hand so incredibly easy, to figure out what has gone on here and what continues to go on at the Veterans Affairs Administration. And we are just not going to allow this to fail. We're not. I'd like now to yield to my very good friend and ranking member, Levin, for his comments.
I thank my friend, the chairman, and I definitely concur. We all want the same thing. We want GI Bill benefits on time through the digital GI Bill modernization. It's unfortunate that a number of the witnesses couldn't appear today. I know there were some scheduling conflicts, and I think there was one at least that had a family commitment. But we need to hear from all these folks who couldn't attend in the coming weeks and months. I, too, was very troubled by the Inspector General report. I will say that I wasn't necessarily surprised because we've been getting updates regularly every month from Education Service. It's been a common practice since COVID to get those updates. And those meetings, those updates were necessary because of the implementation issues that we've had with the Forever GI Bill for some time. And that goes back to the implementation contract with Booz Allen from a number of years ago. I will tell you that this is, I have props today. I'm very excited. Usually they don't let me have props. This is good.
We are excited.
We are excited about the, wait until you see what I'm going to show you in a second. Shortly after I was first sworn into Congress and entrusted with the gavel of the subcommittee in 2019, I traveled to Muskogee, Oklahoma to see firsthand the outdated, duct-taped together systems that Education Services was relying on to administer the digital GI Bill. This was more than 6 years ago, the photo behind me. It was very clear that VBA's IT infrastructure had been underfunded and left with Band-Aid fixes for 50 years. Frankly, it was a mess. It was a mess. I took time to kind of go off script. I told the VA folks there I wanted to go speak with the employees of the call center. They have this converted grocery store out there in the middle of Muskogee that is a big call center. And I wanted to understand, what was happening with those call center employees. And it was truly incredible that anybody got anything done at all. They were cobbling together, several different software systems. Some were relying on COBOL. Some, were trying to patch together Microsoft Windows. They were printing their own stuff, on Microsoft Word. It was crazy. It was just crazy. And we spent the day with President Trump's Undersecretary of Benefits, Dr. Paul Lawrence, really nice man. We learned what the digital GI Bill would mean for the agency and what it would mean for veterans and why it absolutely needs to happen. Before we departed, we did what you do in Muskogee, Oklahoma. Where's the next slide? Okay, this is the important one. There, right there. We got some excellent barbecue. And stay with me. There's a method to my madness here. I sat there with a triple meat platter of pulled pork, brisket, and jalapeno cheddar sausage with this guy here. Thank you, Justin. And I had a chance to reflect as I was sitting there eating the barbecue. Good barbecue takes a good chef, takes a good recipe, takes quality ingredients, and takes time, patience, and attention to detail. You can't rush perfect barbecue. And forgive my dad joke, Mr. Chairman, but I fear today that we could risk pulling the meat from the smoker too soon. I think we all can agree that the digital GI Bill project has had some big problems, some major problems due to poor planning. The original scope was too small, partially because we in Congress initially only provided $30 million to conduct the modernization. It's before I got there, so not my fault. But we can't ignore the fact that IT had been left to languish under all the administrations in the 3 to 5 decades prior, putting Band-Aids over problems and slapping more systems on top of the Benefits Delivery Network, also known as BDN, to mitigate problems. In 2018, the VA press secretary, who is named Kurt Cashore, he said, the law requires a 50-year-old IT platform that was designed to do the equivalent of basic math to instead perform something akin to calculus in short order. That's what he said in 2018. And the March 2021 contract that was developed originally was scoped only to replace some of the systems on the list. It has become more and more evident that most or all of these must be replaced for the digital GI Bill to work. And to make that happen, VA has had to rescope and modify the contract. In reading the OIG's report, it is very apparent poor communication, poor contract management have caused roadblocks. What I hope to learn today is how we ensure that the lessons that we should be learning don't keep repeating themselves, right? We can't keep doing, not learning from our past mistakes, expecting any better. We've got to get this right. And why is it so important that we get this right? The systems that we're here to talk about today serve over 850,000 beneficiaries a year. They pay out nearly $11 billion to veterans and their families. Discontinuing these systems too early would put benefit payments at risk. They often provide the main or only income for veterans and their families attending school. And I could go on, but the bottom line is trying to modernize and replace these systems is very much like swapping out parts of a jumbo jet while it's in flight. I get that. At least with the jumbo jet, most are regularly serviced and upgraded while not actively flying. And look, I just want to make sure that above all the politics, above all the back and forth, you guys got to fix this, and we can't keep doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. And I look forward to hearing how you're going to do that today. And as the chairman said, it is truly nonpartisan. By the way, I invite the chairman to, and Matt, you come to Muskogee. They have great barbecue, and we can have a whole day out of it, and we can see the patchwork system that we're trying to have the GI Bill operate under and how it's completely ineffective, unacceptable. We've got to work together to fix it, and I'll yield back.
Thank you, Ranking Member Levin. And if you see me in the profile, you'll realize that I will not turn down good food. Yes, that was a fat joke. In accordance to Committee Rule 5 Echo, I ask unanimous consent that Representative Rosendale from Montana be permitted to participate in today's subcommittee hearing. Hearing no objection, we'll proceed. Welcome aboard, sir. I spoke to Mike previously, and we've agreed to give the OIG 10 minutes to testify in a row because, as I said earlier, this is an incredibly complicated issue and it has to be followed temporally. And if we were to break it up into sections and question and answer, I think we'll lose the grand vision. So I spoke to the Cats about that previously. They're prepared to do so, and Ranking Member Levin also agreed to it. So I'd like to introduce the witness panel. Our first witness is Dr. Burke, Deputy Undersecretary for Policy and Oversight at the Veterans Benefits Administration. Mr. Burke is accompanied by Mr. Joseph Garcia. Nice to see you again, Mr. Garcia. Executive Director of Education Services at the Veterans Benefit Administration, and Mr. Robert Orifici, right? Orifici. Orifici, yeah, sorry, man. I did that last time, too. Orifici, sorry, man, that's on me. Benefits and Memorial Service Portfolio Director at the Office of Information and Technology. Our second witness is Mr. Nicholas Dahl, Deputy Assistant Inspector General for Management and Administration at the Department of Veterans Affairs, OIG. Our third witness is Mr. Justin Park, Managing Director of Accenture Federal Services. Will all the witnesses please stand and raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to provide is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you. Let the record reflect that the witnesses have answered in the affirmative. Please take your seats. Mr. Burke, you're now recognized for 5 minutes to deliver your testimony on behalf of the Department of Veterans Affairs.
Chairman Van Orden, Ranking Member Levin, and other members of the subcommittee, thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today to discuss the VA Digital GI Bill program and VA's continued information technology system improvements. Accompanying me is Joseph Garcia, Executive Director of Education Service, and Robert Orifici, Executive Director of VA's Office of Information and Technology, Benefits and Memorial Services. VA started its digital GI Bill modernization journey in 2021 to enhance service to VA's customers and equip them with the tools and resources necessary to achieve academic and career goals. The new platform streamlines education benefits delivery and has increased timeliness through automation. Since implementation of the DGIB platform, automation of original claims through FY24 has grown from 0% to 32%, and supplemental claims from 39% to 64%. Since our last hearing in July of 2023, VA has accomplished quite a bit. The time it takes to decide an original claim decreased from 28 days to 10 days, and supplemental claims time has dropped from 14 days to 4 days. A recent example of this faster timeliness is active duty service member Carson, who submitted his original claim for education benefits. The application process was streamlined, now including pre-filled service history information. After completing a few questions, Carson submitted his GI Bill application through the new automated platform and within 15 minutes received his digital certificate of eligibility, a process which used to take several weeks. His spouse expressed gratitude for VA's quick decision and what it means for their growing family's future. The DGIB platform also reduces security risk for customers while providing a smoother Chapter 33 claims processing experience for veteran claims examiners by integrating claims processing to a single platform. For the first time, VA is able to synchronize data across platforms. VA has made improvements to its DGI program governance, leading to its improved customer experience for the school certifying officials. In March 2023, Enrollment Manager launched, replacing a dated legacy system, and since then, VA has successfully processed nearly 8 million enrollments using the modernized system. In July of 2024, VA successfully transitioned payment processing on schedule to the Empower payment platform. This transition, Release 6, moved 87% of total payments processing from the Benefits Delivery Network, BDN, legacy platform, marking the accomplishment of a major milestone in decommissioning the 50-plus-year-old BDN platform. Working with our partners at AFS, Release 7 will further streamline the claims processing experience by introducing the Benefits Manager application. Benefits Manager is the first of a series of processing and workload management features planned for Releases 8, 9, and 10 that will permanently optimize the claims processing workflow. The highest priority for DGIB is improving the veteran experience. VA uses veteran signal surveys to measure customer satisfaction through various phases of educational pursuit. Based on survey results, the overall trust score has improved by 12.96% from FY22 to FY24. Although I have highlighted many improvements to the digital GI Bill modernization effort made over the past 3 years, I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge the challenge and lessons learned. The OIG's recent report highlighted several issues and recommendations which we are leveraging for continuous improvement. In addition to their recommendations, OIG identified increased costs associated with the DGIB contract. VA acknowledges the true complexity of the modernization vision was not apparent at the start of the original contract developed in 2020. The VA technology and data environment has evolved rapidly since then, and VA has made the course corrections necessary to meet modernization objectives. VA will continue to review and update the master planning schedule through an effective governance review, but we will not take our foot off the gas. Mr. Chairman, I acknowledge the challenges we have experienced in implementing DGIB. I believe we're now on the right path to improve education benefits for veterans and their families. VA welcomes the feedback from all stakeholders, including OIG, and appreciates the continuous support of Congress. This concludes my testimony. My colleagues and I look forward to responding to any questions you or other members of the subcommittee may have.
Thank you, Mr. Burke. Your written testimony will be entered into the hearing record. And by the way, it's good to see you guys too. And Mr. Orifici, I'm sorry for doing that twice. Mr. Dahl, you're now recognized for 10 minutes to deliver your testimony on behalf of the Inspector General.
Thank you. Chairman Van Orden, Ranking Member 11, Congressman Rosendale. Thank you for the opportunity to discuss the OIG's oversight of VBA's implementation of the digital GI Bill platform. VA began modernizing its GI Bill operations and systems in March 2021 to a digital platform in order to improve the processing and delivery of educational benefits to hundreds of thousands of veterans and other beneficiaries. This is just one of many significant IT systems critical to VA operations that the OIG has conducted oversight work on. OIG personnel have been proactively overseeing VA system modernization efforts related to financial and acquisition management, electronic health records, and benefits automation. However, similar to what we have testified on and reported in the past, the digital GI Bill platform effort was impacted by poor planning, missteps in implementation, and cost overruns. VBA is not projecting to fully implement the platform until July 2026, which is 27 months after the original planned implementation date. VBA's insufficient planning led to unrealistic developer contract requirements and terms, resulting in several contract modifications. The original contract was valued at $453 million. Then, a 2022 modification added $54 million. A December 2023 renegotiated contract added another $425 million, bringing the total estimated cost to $932 million. The IG is concerned that weaknesses in contract management continue to risk further delays and cost escalations. VBA missed its target for full operability, largely due to the rushed contract planning and a lack of IT expertise involved early on, leading to unclear and unrealistic requirements. VBA hastily awarded the contract to use CARES Act funding before it expired. Sufficiently trained and experienced technical experts could have helped to plan the contract and develop the requirements. As of May 2023, VBA had made numerous contract modifications and revisions, contributing to significant delays. One of the core contract planning deficiencies was VA's failure to account for the time and resources needed to establish 3 test environments by October of 2022. The contractor was depending on the availability of these environments to conduct multiple overlapping tests that would improve the chance of meeting contract deadlines. However, an Office of Information Technology leader told the OIG team that they informed the contractor they did not have the funding, resources, or infrastructure to provide more than 1 test environment. More than a year after the initial due date, the single testing environment was available for the contractor's use. The OIG acknowledges that, in response, the renegotiated contract terms in December 2023 only require VA to provide 1 testing environment. To fully implement the digital GI Bill platform, VBA must address challenges associated with integrating numerous IT systems and decommissioning 12 legacy systems. Much of the decommissioning effort focuses on the Benefits Delivery Network, or BDN. However, 4 of its systems cannot be taken offline until the BDN replacement is complete and the digital GI Bill platform is fully functional as envisioned. While some legacy systems have been decommissioned or consolidated, including the long-term solution, which was the predecessor to the digital GI Bill platform, others are still in use. VBA's education service had wanted all BDN functions merged into the digital GI Bill platform by September of 2023, but the service did not have control over external stakeholders responsible for decommissioning BDN, which may now not occur until as late as spring 2025. This will add costs and delays in the platform's full implementation. While the contractor and OIT have made progress on decommissioning legacy systems, significant work remains. The OIG also found that until February 2023, VBA lacked an overall integrated master schedule that tracked adjacent and parallel efforts, some of which affect the digital GI Bill platform timeline directly. The schedule being used did not consider all external dependencies, including current modernization efforts by VBA that involve decommissioning other IT systems. The integrated master schedule was also not consistently shared with the platform's contractor. The process and communication challenges made it more difficult to identify dropped or incomplete tasks, also contributing to delays and higher costs. According to GAO's schedule assessment guide, VBA should update its overall schedule regularly, providing a realistic forecast of start and completion dates for all related activities, and then consistently share updates with all applicable parties. In April 2024, OI&T informed the audit team that the integrated master schedule now combines stakeholder activities across the program for a holistic view of each product increment. These efforts will be evaluated during the OIG's routine follow-up and recommendation implementation. A fully implemented digital GI Bill platform should allow faster decision-making and decrease manual work by education service staff. It is concerning, however, that the identified contract planning and management deficiencies are similar to those identified in other VA IT modernization projects. While VBA has renegotiated the contract's terms and some of the platform's functionalities have been implemented, there is still a long path to full development. Success hinges on stronger contract management by VBA going forward and close monitoring of the complex decommissioning efforts of other related IT systems. The OIG will continue its oversight of these efforts. Mr. Chairman, this concludes my statement. I would be happy to answer any questions you or other members of the subcommittee may have.
Thank you, Mr. Dahl. Your written testimony will be entered into the hearing record. Quick question: do you have any? You got any people in Wisconsin?
Do we have any employees in Wisconsin?
No, you Dahl. It's a very common name.
No, I know a lot of Norwegians are from that part of the country, but none that I'm aware of.
Okay, there's a ton. A lot of them are my friends, great business people. Mr. Park, you're now recognized for 5 minutes to deliver your testimony on behalf of the Accenture Federal Services.
Chairman Van Orden, members of the Subcommittee on Economic Opportunity, thank you for inviting me to testify today at today's hearing. I am Justin Park, a Managing Director at Accenture Federal Services and a member of the Accenture Federal Leadership Team. I'm also the Program Manager of our Digital GI Bill engagement, leading the implementation and operations of Accenture Federal DGIB systems. I'm honored to be here today and to serve veterans and their families in my role on the DGIB program. For 80 years, the GI Bill has been one of the most impactful economic programs ever created. In just 3 years, DGIB has transformed how beneficiaries and stakeholders engage with education benefits. We understand the massive importance of our mission to make it easier for veterans to access and reliably receive the benefits they've earned. Since the competitive contract award in March 2021, Accenture Federal has supported VA's DGIB efforts to deliver benefits faster, easier, and more accurately, while addressing decades of VA legacy system technical debt. To highlight just a few of the many outcomes already delivered, to date, DGIB has processed over 11 million claims, delivering more than $28 billion in veteran benefits to 1.5 million unique beneficiaries. With 99.99% uptime, DGIB ensures that veterans can reliably access and receive their benefits. We've accomplished rapid implementation of legislative mandates like Isaacson-Roe, expanding eligibility to the GI Bill students. We enabled 14,000 veterans to use the innovative Vet Tech program to pursue high-tech careers. We created Enrollment Manager, which streamlined the work of 18,000 school certifying officials, making it easier for veterans to get education. And for the first time in GI Bill's 80-year history, we reduced the time it takes veterans to apply and to receive benefit eligibility decisions from weeks and days to mere minutes with automation. We're proud to say that since the hearing before the subcommittee last July, we deployed 19 significant enhancement releases, including Major Release 6, on the committed schedule. Release 6 made 87% of veteran claims and payments more accurate and more secure by integrating DGIB with Empower and shifting that workload off the BDN mainframe. As a direct result of the new Chapter 33 controls and integrations, monthly housing allowance payment processing is faster, more reliable, and increased to 99.99% accuracy. This is a significant achievement as VA made multiple attempts over several decades to replace the 50-year-old BDN mainframe. These repeated attempts underscore how challenging and complex it is for VA to define the requirements. Not only that, but VA must also contend with competing and emerging agency-wide priorities. As with any large IT implementation, additional requirements may be generated as stakeholders identify business and technical needs or as external constraints arise. This is what happened here. Additional requirements expanded the scope from the original contract, and conflicting agency-wide priorities delayed implementation. This drove a cost increase. As a result of these changes in per VA change control and contract processes, last year, an updated DGIB contract reestablished the path forward to continue meeting VA priorities and serving veterans. Throughout, we remain focused on delivering value and outcomes for veterans. We have already completed Release 7 development, and VA user acceptance testing has begun. We are on track for Release 8 development and BDN legacy data migration. By November 2025, the remaining 13% of BDN education claims processing and historical data will be in DGIB, with integration to VA Empower for payment. This will enable VA to retire BDN. With this contract, VA selected an innovative strategy to enhance the veteran education benefits experience as quickly as possible. In partnership with VA, we have done that. We are committed to delivering benefits to veterans faster, easier, more reliably, and accurately. Together with VA, we're establishing the education services that veterans and their families deserve. Thank you.
The gentleman yields back. Mr. Park, your written statement will be entered into the record. The chair now recognizes Mr. Peters, PhD, from MITRE to deliver 5 minutes of testimony of how they screwed up this entire thing to begin with. Yeah. I hope they watch it on television. I now recognize Ranking Member Levin for 5 minutes to question any witnesses.
Thank you, Chairman. Mr. Burke, I will start with you. It's beyond concerning that the digital GI Bill IT modernization contract was delayed and increased in cost. So we'll make sure I got this right. You said $453 million, then another $54 million, then another $425 million for a total of $932 million. I think I got that right. I don't think anybody would consider that acceptable. I saw the old systems firsthand in Muskogee. I saw MS-DOS prompts that VA employees were using, 1970s era systems that VA had to hire people out of retirement to understand how to use. And I saw the delays that this caused in getting student veterans their housing allowance and even simple stuff like change of address. I mean, it was just remarkable any of it was working at all. Mr. Burke, can you lay down a little history for us? How many systems touched GI Bill benefits processing before modernization in 2018?
Yes, sir. Before modernization, up to 16 different systems were being used.
And how many have been updated or replaced since 2018?
We've replaced 2. We're working on replacing the 3rd. And then we have plans to replace 3 more by the time the modernization effort is over.
And how many does that leave?
That leaves 10.
10, okay. How many do you, so you plan to update or replace under the current contract, 6, 10 still out there. What was the original Booz Allen contract supposed to replace in 2018, and what happened with that contract?
So the initial contract was initially put in place to replace BDN. Then the Colmer Act was passed, and the focus was kind of shifted to implementing Colmary. That was a failed effort, and so at that point, the Undersecretary for Benefits at that time moved into a completely different direction, and that's when we started to partner with AFS.
And what was the plan in 2020? We passed the CARES Act towards the end of the Trump administration, and then in 2021, I know that the IG obviously said there were some rushed judgments that were made, but could you expand on what you were looking to update with the money from the CARES Act?
Yes, sir. The intent of using the CARES Act was to actually kickstart the DGIB modernization efforts.
Do you agree with the characterization that there was a rush to judgment with use of those funds? I
do, yes, sir.
I appreciate that. I understand that the original digital GI Bill RFP was released on the VA Transformation 21 Total Technology Next Generation, what an acronym, TN4G contract on December 30, 2020 under the prior administration. OIG report states that, quote, original contract requirements were unclear and included unrealistic expectations which resulted in development and implementation delays for the digital GI Bill platform. Mr. Burke, does VA agree with OIG on this?
Yes, sir, we do agree that the original contract was unclear and included unrealistic expectations. In fact, the first contract, I think, had somewhere near 153 requirements, whereas the new contract has nearly 600. So it was very complex, and some of the fidelity of those requirements in the initial contract were not there.
You believe all those original contract issues have been adequately addressed?
Yes, sir, I do.
What would be the consequences for veterans and beneficiaries if these updates that you're discussing are not carried out? Can you speak specifically to things like errors or delays in payments or anything else you'd like to highlight?
Yes, sir. So I would say that had these efforts not been carried out, or if we don't continue to carry these out, that we won't experience any improvement in the trust scores that we have with the very important folks that we're here to serve. We would not experience any improvements in accuracy, nor would we see any improvement in the timeliness of our delivery of benefits. So these current actions, the actions that we're undertaking now, will improve benefits delivery, satisfaction scores, but will also allow us to better utilize our human resources and not dedicate manual efforts to things that will be replaced by or supplemented by automated efforts.
Thank you, Mr. Burke. Chairman, I've got lots more questions, so I'll hold for now and we'll.
The gentleman yields back. We will be doing a second round of questions, and we're staying here until we get some real answers. The chair now recognizes my friend from the great state of Montana, Mr. Rosendale, for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I really appreciate you including me in the hearing today. And Representative Levin, $945 million buys a lot of barbecue, my friend. Mr. Park, how much has Accenture been paid through digital GI Bill so far?
To date, we have been paid $489 million.
$489 million.
That's correct.
Mr. Park, what is the total value of Accenture's 2 contracts for the digital GI Bill, including all years and optional tasks?
It is $989 million.
Almost $1 billion. Does that include, what have you included in the contract, I would imagine, if there are any change orders? Is there any additional language in the contract that says this is all encompassing? If there is additional work to be performed that is outside of this contract, then it will be, this other price list will be applied?
There is a component of the contract that provides for additional scope as needed under an agile capacity construct.
Okay, so change orders, any kind of additional work that is outside of the contract, you have a price list which is attached to the contract that says this is how we will be compensated if it's for any additional work that is not described in the contract, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So we may not be at 989, almost $1 billion. We very easily could exceed that if there's additional work that is required by the VA.
In the $989 million, there is a portion already provided for that is an optional set of tasks for that scenario you just described.
However, any work that is not described and included in that contract, we have a price list, which would be in excess of the 989.
If the scope and schedule is as described right now,
Outside of the contract, any work that is being completed outside of the description in that contract would be in excess of the 989. Yes. And you have a price list attached to cover that, correct?
Correct.
Correct, okay. Mr. Park, when your colleague, Colin Mitchell, testified on July of last year, we had a lengthy discussion about contract dependencies, meaning things VA promised to do or make available to Accenture that Accenture's pricing was based on. Are you familiar with those dependencies?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Park, did the VA's failure to make good on the dependencies lead to the price increases on your contract?
That is a component of the increase of cost, yes, as well as additional scope.
Okay. Once I heard refer to Dr. Burke, is Dr. Burke?
It is not.
It is not.
It is not.
Okay, so Mr. Burke, same question. Are the dependencies the reason VA agreed to significant price increases, including the new, more expensive contract?
I say it was a part of it, but certainly there were lack of requirements, additional scope that also influenced the cost.
Okay. Mr. Park, have Accenture and VA completely resolved the dependencies, or are some of them still uncertain or being disputed, potentially leading to more contract price increases?
We have mapped out in the contract, as well as through program management with a strong governance structure that VA has, all of the dependencies. As we sit here today, there are no discrepancies in the understanding of dependencies. What remains is simply executing against that plan.
Okay, so Mr. Park, if the digital GI Bill project encounters more delays or additional work becomes necessary that's not currently included in your contracts, will Accenture commit to finishing the project at cost without the profit for more change orders?
The contract, as any contract, describes a scope, schedule, and dependencies. If we can execute collectively, and I have confidence in this VA team that we will do that.
Okay, so that's a no. You're going to get your change orders. You're going to be compensated for your change orders. And now that I'm down to my remaining 40 seconds, what I would like to say is, this is the problem that we run into with virtually every single software company that has come before me. And I can't pin down whether all of the responsibility lies on the VA for not properly describing what they need, or the software companies or the vendors that hold themselves out as the experts. You're the experts in the field. We can't hire experts within every agency in government to oversee the vendors that we're hiring. That's what your job is. And so when a request comes out that describes work that needs to be done, if you were holding yourself up as the expert in the field, you should define and discuss what needs to be included to perform that task. And if you're not, you're either incompetent or dishonest. If somebody on this committee goes and purchases an automobile and then takes it home and discovers that it doesn't have blinkers, and it doesn't have a horn, and it doesn't have the devices that are necessary, windshield wipers, so that you can properly operate it on the road, if they disclose that, and the price was reflective of that before you left the showroom, then that's on the consumer. But if you didn't, and the consumer comes back and says, I paid full price for this vehicle, and yet it doesn't have all of these components that are necessary for me to function, then that dealer is dishonest. And that's how I look at every one of these programs. And so what you do is you end up being compensated to complete tasks that were never described, that you should have, if you did not, that you should have identified, that were necessary to be included in that software program. And the whole while that you're experimenting to develop this, our veterans are being treated as guinea pigs in the process. And it's deeply disturbing to me, because you're getting your profit, you're getting your salary, and our veterans and their families are suffering. And it's wrong. And I can't tell whether more of the responsibility lies on you, Mr. Burke, for allowing this to happen and not better describing what we need, or you, Mr. Park, because of trying to increase your profits, securing a deal with money that was available at the time, easy money was available at the time, knowing full well that that contract wasn't going to increase a little bit. It's more than doubled. And it's almost $1 billion, and I will guarantee you, before this committee comes back and convenes again, it will be over $1 billion. And that is completely unacceptable. It's completely unacceptable. And so, Mr. Dahl, I appreciate all the work that the OIG has done to help us try to uncover that. With that, Mr. Chair, I yield back, and I, again, thank you for including me.
You're welcome. The gentleman yields back. We're going to do a second round. All right. I sorry I wanted to interrupt you, but you're on this galactic roll. I mean, I was even doing some little tapping over here, and he almost grabbed you. Thanks for coming by, man. And you're always welcome here. Yep, take care. The chair I now recognize myself for 5 minutes. Mr. Burke, you said that Mr. Park has been paid how much money?
$480+ million to this
Okay.
point.
Mr. Peters, PhD from MITRE, how much money did you receive to help plan this project? Okay, I guess I'll have to ask you, Mr. Burke. How much money did the Veterans Affairs Administration give to MITRE to help plan this?
Mr.
hold on a
Chairman,
second.
that number I don't know. I'll bring that
Hold on
back.
a sec. So what exactly was Dr. P, or Mr. P, yeah, PhD, I guess. What was their play in this whole thing?
So I will say we've had a great partnership with all of our partners, whether it be AFS, MITRE. MITRE is doing significant work on the life cycle cost
Okay,
estimate.
Mr. Burke, I'm going to be really direct. I'm telling you what, I'm not leaving this committee room. So if you want to do that all day, I'll do that all day. Okay. And by the way, I would have a fantastic working relationship with you too if you gave me $450 million. Let's just put that out. So what exactly, specifically, was MITRE supposed to do at the inception of this project?
So I'll start my answer again. We've got fantastic partnerships with all of our partners, MITRE included. MITRE has done significant work for us on the life cycle cost estimate. I wasn't around at the beginning of this project, so I'm not sure exactly what was expected at the beginning. That was under prior leadership. But if you're looking for accountability, I'm right here. And I am holding our partners accountable through executive steering committees, setting expectations. I was a part of the renegotiation of the contract that more clearly laid out expectations, and we hold folks accountable to those milestones and those deadlines.
So did I just hear correctly that you're accepting full responsibility for the additional $450 million that it's going to take to get this done?
Let me
That's
elab-
what that sounded like.
Let me elaborate on my answer. With all things VBA, the Undersecretary for Benefits is responsible for VBA. With respect to the effective modernization efforts for DGIB, I was designated about 3 years ago, 2.5 years ago, as the accountable official. I take full accountability for what I will say is the success of this project. I don't take credit for the success, but I am accountable for the modernization effort.
Thank you. Mr. Orifici, you were there. What happened? What were they supposed to be doing?
MITRE was brought on board to help us with the planning of the acquisition for digital GI Bill, the life cycle cost estimate, and program management support.
Okay, so how I read this and sitting with the OIG is that, and Mr. Burke, you said VA poor planning. So the VA is not a person. And I've had these discussions with you guys in different parts of the VA frequently. The VA is not a person. Dr. Peters is a person, but he's not here. Mr. Orifici is a person. He's here from the beginning. Mr. Burke here is, he picked it up as he's going along. So who exactly did the planning that, as pointed out very clearly in the OIG report by Mr. Dahl and his colleagues, who was responsible for the planning? Like, who was that? The VA didn't plan it. People at the VA planned it. So who are those people, and why are they still employed? Who are they? Anybody?
I'll take that, Mr. Chairman. The individuals that were involved in the initial planning for these efforts are no longer with the organization through various means. I will say that the folks that are involved in the digital GI Bill modernization efforts now are committed to the people that we're intended to serve. We've also had 6 majorly successful releases and numerous minor releases. The digital GI Bill modernization, while it had
Wait, Mr. Burke?
absolutely,
Okay,
we
Mr.
are
Burke,
aware of the
Mr. Burke.
challenges.
So I hear what you're saying, and I don't appreciate it. So I know that this Mr. 11, hold up the thing, this was signed under the previous administration. I know some of the people you're talking about were political appointees from the previous administration, but not all of them. They weren't. So when we keep saying this, I'm aware of this problem, aware of that, and you're obfuscating at this point. So my time has expired. We are doing a second round of questioning, and a third, and a fourth, and a 15th if we need to. So I'd now like to yield to Ranking Member 11 for 5 minutes? Or, you know what, I'm gonna yield to you for as much time as you consume, sir.
Amazing. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I won't take up that much. I want to go back to the $932 million figure, which it's a pretty stunning figure. I want to seek some clarity here. Is this an increase in cost that's related to the original scope? In other words, is there a much larger scope here? Or is it the same scope and just much, much more expensive than you anticipated? And Mr. Burke, I'll turn to you for that.
Yes, sir. Thank you for the question. First, I would say the increased cost was due to three major things. First, the true complexity of this modernization effort wasn't realized at the beginning, and it was apparent at the start of the original contract. The second is the need to install strong performance metrics to ensure vendor accountability, and the third was to ensure the protection and delivery of VA's intellectual property. We did not have the transfer of intellectual property in the initial contract. The requirements weren't scoped based on the complexity. It was determined once we got into the program. Simply put, this was a much larger endeavor than initially thought.
So when I met with Dr. Lawrence in 2019, he indicated, because you know, when you go and you see COBOL and DOS prompts, you say, this really needs to be fixed. What do you need? And at the time, he said $130 million. That was what he said. And there's a big difference between $130 million and $453 million. So can you clarify what accounts for the difference? I think it's going to be a repeat of your prior answer, but I want to understand the difference between $130 million and a $453 million initial contract scope.
Yes, sir. I think to go back, it is a bit of a repeat of the prior answer, but I'd also like to go back to the original life cycle cost estimate, which it was done at a 25% confidence level, which means even at that time there was a 75% chance that that number was going to increase. And so I think the initial estimation was
I should try that with my home budget, with my wife. I don't think she'd like it very much. So what was the $54 million for?
I believe the $54 million was one of the initial modifications to the original contract.
But what was that modification?
I'd have to go back and I'd have to.
That's a lot of money. I'd like to know. Take that back for the record.
will.
And then what was the $425 million? So that's doubling the size of the contract. What was that?
So as part of the growth of the contract, when we went to increasing the fidelity of the requirements, what we realized is the initial set of requirements lacked significantly.
Okay.
So each time we went back and built out the requirements, when we pulled more subject matter expertise in, which wasn't there quite as needed in the very beginning, as we brought the right people in, we realized there was a lot more work to do. So as the requirement complexity built, as the number of requirements built, the scope got bigger.
What's your confidence interval today that the scope is what you say?
Very high. The confidence
Higher than
level-
25?
Much higher than
50?
25. So with the
75?
we're at 50% is what we're using the life cycle cost estimate. I think this collective group thinks our confidence level in reaching our goals according to the current project milestones is extremely high, well above 50%.
Above 50?
80%.
80?
Yes, sir.
Going once?
80%.
Everybody, 80? Everyone agrees? 80%. So there's a 20% chance that Mr. Rosendale's right, you're going to come back and ask for more money. Is that correct?
You can attribute that quote to me, yes, sir.
Okay. Final question on the topic. One issue also is that we had a program office which has experts on what the technology needs to provide, but doesn't have the experts in technology modernization. How do we need to improve the partnership between the program offices and OIT to ensure this sort of thing doesn't happen again?
Great question. I think one of the things that was lacking significantly and even detected during the IG's findings was the lack of the communication and lack of structure. We've added 15 personnel inside of Education Service as a formal project management office. We have an executive steering committee where decision makers from all parties, OI&T, Accenture, all of our dependent partners, we meet every 2 weeks. We track every one of our dependencies and milestones. And so we've increased communication. The Undersecretary for Benefits and the CIO also hold meetings with us to hold us accountable. And so where we can't resolve things in the steering committee, they elevate to the undersecretary and the CIO, and they help us get to yes or resolve the issues.
So what could we do to further improve and refine that process to get your confidence interval higher than 80%?
I think we need to keep drilling down on the best practices that we've pulled into our current process. We need to keep briefing Congress on our progress. We need to continue to hold ourselves accountable, and we need to keep putting veterans first.
I appreciate that. You mentioned 3 testing environments versus 1 testing environment. Can you explain how having only 1 test environment impacts your work, and how does this impact your ability to complete this contract on schedule?
Yes, sir. If I can, I'd like to defer that to Mr. Orifici.
You got it.
So thank you for that question. With 1 testing environment, you're only able to test 1 release at a time. And so as you're working on developing the solution, if you have multiple solutions that you're working on at once, you have to pause efforts in testing that to test something that you're doing to the production system or that you're doing to one of the other systems that you're working on in parallel. So it limits your ability to test multiple things at once. And so that part of the restructuring of the contract was to build that into the plan and schedule where we could use 1 environment to fully test all the capabilities and sequence it in a way where that would not be a limiter.
So is this a fairly common practice, the 3 testing environments?
We do not have this practice across any other portfolio, any other product within the portfolio.
Should we?
With the 3 test environments today, it's not the number that's the challenge. These are 3 environments of all the interconnected systems. So a test environment, that's 3 dedicated test environments for Master Person Index, for VA Profile, for VBMS, for Empower, and then the same exact production data set across all of those systems. And it's the sequencing of keeping all of these things in sync that causes a challenge, not the number. And so it would not be feasible to scale out our test environments for all other products to meet this need.
Okay, it's clear there was a problem. There was only 1 testing environment. So, Mr. Burke, did OI&T not have enough resources to provide more than 1 test environment? Was there an issue other than that with VA's IT infrastructure accommodating more than 1 test site? I'm trying to understand how this went wrong.
So in terms of where this went wrong from the beginning, when this program was originally stood up, the team who was looking at this was looking at the environments that are available through the BDN and the connections there. And it was not forward-looking at what the end-to-end meant in terms of those other systems like MPI, VA Profile, and Empower, where we did not have those test environments. So the team was used to working where they were the sole team working within BDN, so they could build up as many environments as they want. It didn't have the interconnectivity that the digital GI Bill now has, which brings the value and integration to be able to automate and provide the efficiencies that system does. And that was a misinterpreted requirement by our teams.
Thank you. In the interest of moving this along, I'm just going to ask one more question, but it's an important one, and it's for you, Mr. Burke. Who is in charge of ensuring everyone on a go-forward basis is on the same page and on the same schedule and adhering to the budget?
So ultimately, within VBA, the Undersecretary for Benefits is responsible for all things. With respect to the digital GI Bill modernization, that authority was delegated to me, and I do that through the Executive Steering Committee, where all of our partners have decision-making authority, and where we don't get to a go or a good point, I elevate that to the USB and also the CIO. So in essence, the Undersecretary is always responsible for everything in VBA, but I take accountability and was delegated authority under this modernization effort.
Thank you, Mr. Burke. With that, I'll yield back.
The gentleman yields back, and I'm going to yield myself as much time as I would like to consume, and I would also like to invite the ranking member to ask anything at any point if something comes up, okay? It will be noted for the record that the Undersecretary, Josh Jacobs, refused to come to this hearing. He was invited and sent you guys. So the person at the VA who is ultimately responsible, according to you, Mr. Burke, did not come here. And that ranks right along with Mr. Peters. And that's unacceptable. I got to ask you, Mr. Burke, you're in the service, right? You're a vet.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. In what service?
Marine Corps.
Marine Corps, Semper Fi.
Hoorah.
If at any point in your Marine Corps career, if someone came up to you and said, we're going to launch a mission with 25% confidence that everyone's not going to die, would you have gone on that mission?
No, sir.
Okay. So then why in the hell did the VA launch what's turning into $1 billion project with only 25% confidence that the initial amount of money that's allocated budgetarily to this program would work?
Yes, sir. I think it goes back to the fact that we were trying to do well. There was good intent, and it was hastily done. And it lacked the subject matter expertise and the right people involved and the right partnerships, not for the lack of good intent, but it was not executed properly.
Mr. Burke, it is a biblical principle that the road to hell is paved with good intentions. And that's sort of what happened. What happened was you guys saw a big pot of money with an expiration date on it. So your department foolishly launched this project with 25% confidence. And I posit, sir, that by you doing that was the same as launching a mission where people are going to get killed. This is why. How many home health care folks could provide in-home health care to our veterans for $450 million? How many respite care workers that could give a break to a caregiver in the home so that they can get psychological care and just physical rest? How many of those people could be employed for $450 million? How many more psychiatrists and psychologists and telehealth platforms could we buy for $450 million? How many veterans' lives could be saved because they get to speak to somebody and they don't commit suicide for $450 million? So by incredibly foolish series of decisions by your department, you are de facto responsible for veterans committing suicide and not getting health care and not being able to die in dignity in their home. That's why we do this. We don't like picking on you guys, man. We're trying to save veterans' lives. And good intentions mean nothing when the veteran's dead. They mean nothing. So when my colleague, Mr. Levin, asked, with what level of fidelity do you think you're at? And you said 80%. Everyone's like 80%. You know who didn't nod their head? Mr. Dahl. The one guy whose department has gone through all the stuff that you've been doing. The one dude that has a better look at all this stuff from an objective perspective didn't nod his head. Mr. Dahl, what's your level of confidence that this is going to be completed by 2026 at the 900 and what thing? It's just, I mean, it's $942 million. It's monopoly money at this point. So what is your opinion, Mr. Dahl?
I would hesitate to offer an opinion. I will say that we're confident if VBA is successful in implementing our recommendations.
Let me reframe this question, sir. We have identified that the Veterans Affairs Administration disregarded every single known planning factor. They disregarded every project management thing. They didn't even want to give us a calendar. Remember that? We had to show the Veterans Affairs Administration what a calendar was and then put plans of actions and milestones on that. And then according to our brief the other day, they really just did the same thing. Hey, you got to fix all this stuff. They disregarded all of your recommendations, or the majority of them, and then they did the same thing for another $450 million. So keeping that in mind, which we call a pattern of conduct, please answer that question again.
I'm really not in a position to tell you how confident I am. The VA has a track record.
Mr. Dahl, go ahead, please. Continue, please.
VA does have a track record of difficulty in implementing major IT systems.
Okay.
They almost without fail take longer. They take replan. So I would prefer to just leave it at that.
Well, I I respect your professional opinion of your position, but I believe you answered my question. Hey, hand me that thing there, Kate. It's an old graphs and stuff. Have you guys heard of a Pell Grant? Anybody? Pell Grant? Okay, so here's how a Pell Grant works. It's right here. That's how a Pell Grant works. You get money and then people in schools. So you have an Institute of Higher Learning, and you have a student. The student has to be vetted. You get all this, you're the right person at the right time, has a bunch of requirements, eligibility and whatnot. And then they apply to a school, and then the school gets paid. Oh, sorry, I forgot. You're not the only one with these zippy pictures, pal. Yeah, then then the school gets paid, and so does the student. And the Pell Grant, they have a 2.83% error rate right now, right? So less than 3%. Did it occur to anyone at the Veterans Affairs Administration to maybe go, hey, how do you administer the Pell Grant? What do you do? What systems do you use? Instead of blowing $1 billion that could have been applied to veterans' health care to make sure they didn't commit suicide. Did anybody do that in your executive planning sessions, I'm not asking you, Burke. Mr. Burke. I'm asking you, Mr. Orifici, because you're around. Did you look at pre-existing models that the federal government uses to do essentially exactly the same thing that you're doing?
Before the Digital GI Bill program, we actually did meet with the Department of Education and talked about their IT solutions that they had in place. I don't know that they played a part in the planning of the actual program as we moved the contract forward.
So you went to talk to someone, and trust me, if I'm complimenting the Department of Education, that's dogs and cats sleeping together at this point, okay? So you went to a department that has an existing program that was working with still 2.83% is too big of a failure rate. And then you used did you just pick the parts that weren't working? And then and put that, were those the parts that you used for your planning factor?
They were exploratory conversations, or they weren't actually part of the research for the contract.
Are you familiar with something called Cerner?
I am, sir.
Do you know how much money? Cerner is going to be the electronic medical record. To date, the Veterans Affairs Administration has spent about $16 billion for something that doesn't work. Are you familiar with a system called Epic?
Yes, sir, I am.
Okay, Epic is a COTS, that's a commercial off-the-shelf technology, medical software suite that you can drive to the headquarters from my house in an hour and a half. When I go around to my visits and I speak to everybody, I speak to the doctors and all the providers and everybody, they just want to use Epic. It's a pre-existing thing. It bridges all of your platforms. You can use community care, which some people, the Veterans Affairs Administration, are hesitant because they're kind of protecting their own thing. But you can have an immediate connection from the civilian to the military thing. Problem solved. But the VA chose to do this instead. They did Cerner instead of Epic, and we did this instead of paying a 14-year-old in Pop-Tarts and Red Bull who could have had this done in about 6 months in between playing Call of Duty. Okay, where are those other things over there? This is just baffling to me. Yeah. Mr. Park, what is your communication feedback loop with the VA at this point?
As Mr. Burke mentioned, we have a governance structure. We meet frequently every week with Mr. Garcia. We also have a bi-weekly executive steering committee, which Mr. Burke chairs.
And when did that start?
From day one.
All right. Mr. Jacobs, or is Josh, he's not here, is Undersecretary Jacobs involved in those meetings?
Quick question to me.
Yeah,
He is not.
okay. So, hold on a sec. Mr. Garcia, the last time we were here, you said that you're responsible for all this stuff? And now Mr. Burke is telling me that he's responsible for all this stuff? Who's responsible?
Sir, as Mr. Burke said, he is the accountable official, but like Mr. Park said, we meet regularly on governance, so that's where I get involved at my level to make sure operationally we're moving the progress forward.
So no one's responsible. If you're responsible, and Undersecretary Jacobs is responsible, and ultimately Secretary McDonough is responsible, then no one's responsible. So, Mr. Dahl, from your perspective, if you could lay out a line and block chart, who would be responsible for this? I mean, who's in charge?
The Undersecretary for Benefits.
Okay, so the one guy that's responsible, like actually responsible, chose not to attend this meeting. That's the problem, right there. I got to ask you guys some questions here. So there's been a remarkable, demonstrable, definable, and unquestionable amount of incompetence being exercised across the board. So my question to you is, at what point does incompetence become malfeasance? And at what point does malfeasance become corruption? Because you guys keep doing the same thing again and again and again. From Cerner to this to, as Mr. Dahl so aptly pointed out, like every single IT thing. Like, Mr. Dahl, are you aware of any IT project that is organic to the Veterans Affairs Administration that was not over budget and over time? Please tell me just one thing. I want a good news story.
Personally, I'm not.
Okay, I didn't think I was going to get a good news story. Okay, so if we can say Mr. Dahl, who's the OIG, cannot name a single IT project that was organic to the Veterans Affairs Administration, and we're talking with this and the Cerner thing, you know, we're pushing $20 billion. No one has been fired. Everyone has been paid. Everybody's gone to every conference. Everybody gets a bonus. So have we crossed from incompetence into malfeasance, meaning you're doing this on purpose so that you can continue doing the same thing again and getting money, and that is corruption. That's corruption. I mean, that's, right? So until we root out corruption in our own government, which is blatant, we're pointing fingers around the world at everybody else saying you're corrupt, and look at this country and that country, look at these guys. It's right here. And again, the point of this is making sure when we're all like, we're the best, we want everything for every veteran, we want to save it's not true. It is no longer true when we're wasting billions of dollars that could be paying someone that can take care of somebody in Prairie du Chien or Wisconsin, where I live, in their home so they could be there. It's not true when my Uncle Bob, Robert Francis Mulligan, whose picture's right back there, World War II and Korea War veteran, grievously injured in Korea, had to go to a nursing home because a bunch of these programs, no one either knew about them or they're underfunded, and he died alone in a nursing home because of this. So, Mr. Park, Accenture renegotiated this contract at almost double the cost. And you said 99.9%, like you're error-free, correct?
For monthly housing allowance?
Yeah.
Correct, after release.
Okay, then
Last run.
What about everything else?
I believe VA collects information about total payment accuracy. I'll defer to the VA for that.
Total payment accuracy, anybody?
Yes, sir. So total payment accuracy is 98%. And I also have automation accuracy numbers if you desire, Mr. Chairman.
What's it about?
96% for supplemental.
Yep.
The original is lower at 71, but improving.
Okay.
And in fact, with respect to the original claims processing, with working through our governance process, we've had 7 enhancements with 26 total improvements, and will continue as that accuracy level increases. But payment accuracy, 98%. Our combined accuracy between originals and supplementals is 92%, and that's because the original inventory or the original inventory only makes up 7% of the overall inventory.
Okay, hold on one sec. We're doing some quick math up here. So you add all those together, you're 96.25%.
You're averaging averages, Mr. Chairman. That's not, we don't average averages.
Okay, well, I was an enlisted guy. So it looks like, you know, I'm just going to say that it's about 95% across the board, 96%. And it's the timeliness is going to be improved. How has the timeliness improved again?
With respect to timeliness, we've reduced timeliness significantly. With respect to original claims, it used to take on average 28 days to process. It's now down to 10. And with supplementals, it was 14. It has now dropped to 4. And we're continuing to drive not only the improvements in timeliness, but increase the automation percentage and the automation accuracy.
Say two things. What's the automation percentage now? And what was the time reduction to get your certificate of eligibility?
So the reduction for certificate of eligibility is now in minutes, where it used to be weeks.
Minutes? Okay,
So
and
minutes
then,
to weeks.
and then reduction in,
Reduction in time for original claims went from 28 days to 10, for supplementals from 14 to 4. With respect to automation percentages, from original it went from 0% to 32, and for supplemental claims from 39% to 64, and both are climbing.
okay. So we spent $450 million and we're at 96%-ish across the board. So we're going to spend another $450 million to wrap up the other 6%. That makes no sense at all. We are now at 60+% automation and we're climbing. That's good, right? That means more efficiency and all that stuff, right? Here is my question. How many employees are you going to fire once you get this automated?
The answer is 0.
Okay.
We're not firing.
Then why? Okay.
We're repurposing them for other benefits delivery. They're not fired. They're being reutilized, retrained, and repurposed.
Okay. That's corruption. Just nailed it. We're spending $1 billion to make everything more efficient, more cost efficient, and streamlined. And we're not going to remove any of the people from that process when they're redundant at this point, and we're going to repurpose them.
I'm sorry, sir, to clarify, I thought you were referring to removal, meaning from federal government. That's not the goal of automation. Remove them from the process. We're already removing folks from the process. We have a PACT Act that brought in a much larger inventory across all of our benefits portfolios. We have been repurposing people from one business line to the next to take on that workload. That's not corruption. That's benefits delivery, and that's putting veterans first.
Okay, well, that's just not true. I appreciate it greatly, but it's not. It isn't. Starts from the top. No one's been fired. Nobody. You guys you're batting 0. You're batting 0 for IT projects. No one's been fired. You messed up the planning to begin with. You messed it up again. You started off this project with 25% confidence. You would have killed your entire platoon. And people are dying now because we're wasting money. The thing that needs to be repurposed is not a person that's no longer doing a redundant function. It's the money that you're wasting and throwing into a fire. And Mr. Dahl, based on your investigation, do you believe this system is going to be successful if they follow the recommendations?
I have confidence that our recommendations will be helpful to VBA to implement this. What we're hearing today, it seems like things are heading in a positive direction. Keep in mind that our field work ended just before the renegotiated contract, so we have not gone in and analyzed what has happened since the renegotiated contract. But taking what Mr. Burke has said, it seems that things are moving in a positive direction. We're hopeful that our recommendations will help them get to the finish line.
Okay. So here's what I'm going to say. Here's what I'm going to ask. Will anybody here commit to resigning if you spend a single nickel more than what you just said, Mr. Park? Will anybody here resign? You're not going to, and you're not going to, and you're not going to. And no one will be fired. Someone may get a harshly worded email, and billions of dollars are going to be continued to thrown into a fire as we can't fund someone to go take care of a veteran in their home so they can die in dignity. Or we can't fund a telehealth system and a veteran living in a rural area is going to commit suicide. That's what's going to happen. That's why people despise the federal government. And in this particular case, I joined them. I'd like to yield to Ranking Member Levin if he has any further comments, sir.
Thank the chairman, and I thank all of our witnesses. I do share the disappointment with the extraordinary cost overruns here. I am hopeful that your 80% confidence interval will increase rather than decrease. I can tell you that 80% isn't good enough for me. I'm hopeful that we can go back to Muskogee as well and actually see the progress that's been made. What I saw back in 2019 was shocking and disturbing. It was very clear that you had folks using severely antiquated systems. They were doing their best. I give great credit to the ingenuity of the VA staff in Muskogee who were somehow able to cobble together the results necessary for the basic needs of veterans calling in or writing in. Clearly, modernization was needed, but at the time, as I said, the initial estimate from the prior administration compared to the $400+ million that's been spent, now another roughly $500 million that you're contemplating spending. This has to work, and I share the frustration. I also took your words at heart, Mr. Burke, that there are a lot of well-intended people who very much, like us, care about our nation's veterans and want to see this work on a bipartisan basis. I hope in this committee always will do what's best for our veterans. I can tell you that I do believe in the adage, if you're in a hole, you need to stop digging. And I'm hopeful that in these meetings that you're having on a regular basis that you're both reflective of the past in the sense that you're trying to avoid past mistakes, and mindful that you have to be good stewards of every single taxpayer dollar that you have ultimate accountability for. The lack of direct accountability is also a challenge. We faced that, my 5.5 years in this committee, and specifically in the subcommittee, we've had so many hearings, scores of hearings, where we ask who's in charge. So today I at least commend you, Mr. Burke, for saying with clarity and certainty that you're in charge. If not on a flow chart or an org chart somewhere, you go to bed at night thinking about those veterans that you're trying to serve, waking up, figuring out how you can be the best steward of the dollars that VA has responsibility for. I ask you to just, continue on that path of clarity and certainty that what's happened here it really is unacceptable. I commend OIG for their report, for their work. I hope another report isn't needed in 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, but it seems like, the federal government has a tendency to keep you pretty busy at OIG. I can tell you that, at the end of the day, I do think we all want the same thing. And I very much appreciate the opportunity to have worked with the chairman these last couple of years to try to just in the best way we can do what's right for our nation's veterans, make sure they're getting the benefits that they've earned, and that's how it's always going to be in this committee. And I trust that you'll take from this hearing that you can't keep you can't waste another dollar on this. I think all eyes are on what you're doing right now. You've got to get this right. And the next time I go to Muskogee, I want to get the good barbecue, but I also want to see a modern, efficient, effective system where if a veteran moves from state to state, or if a veteran has new needs or concerns, that they're addressed just as they should have been years ago and weren't. I think there's plenty of blame to go around. We're talking about, COBOL's 50 years old. Again, we're talking about 5 decades of employees at VA, again, well-intentioned, but not getting the job done to modernize that system. So we're counting on you to do it. Our veterans are counting on you to do it. And I hope you do. You really need to. And with that, I'll yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Ranking Member Levin. To be explicitly clear, the intent of these harsh words that we are using is for the sole purpose of making sure that our veterans get the care that they deserve and they've earned. I also want to make sure that the folks that check me in La Crosse, Wisconsin, so I can get my health care, that instead of wasting billions of dollars, maybe we can give them a pay raise. Or the fact that we are having difficulty hiring and retaining doctors and nurses and nurse practitioners, psychiatrists, psychologists, counselors. We're having across-the-board issues hiring and retaining these people because they can go into the civilian world and get paid more because we're wasting billions of dollars. So being able to apply the monies that are literally wasted, that have boldly crossed from incompetence to malfeasance to corruption, wiping that out, we can compensate the people that are caring for our veterans, that have given us our freedom, and that we owe a debt. So these programs, the Veterans Affairs Administration also make sure that our Gold Star spouses have benefits. I just walked around, I did a Capitol tour with 4 of our widows and 3 of our widows and 4 of their children. And every penny that is wasted cannot be applied to making sure that our Gold Star families have what they need. And we have to understand that relationship between us and them is not a mortgage. That's not a 30-year commitment. That is a lifetime commitment. And we owe them better. We're talking about prosthetics the other day. We don't have enough money for this, but we have enough money because someone can't follow basic planning guidelines. That's wholly unacceptable. And year after year after year after year, and every single IT project has been a galactic failure from the VA. That's not acceptable. And people need to start losing their jobs, or they need to resign. I'm very clear about this. I got into the SEAL teams because I couldn't carry a rucksack anymore. So I retired because I knew I couldn't do my job. And if I was doing my job at the level that you guys are doing your job, I would resign. And I've proven that. Are you trying to do what's right? Yeah, I get it. But with a demonstrated pattern of conduct, which is exactly what you have, that transcends any good intention. So I ask unanimous consent that all members may have 5 legislative days to revise and extend their remarks and include extraneous material. Without objection, so ordered. This hearing is adjourned.
adjourned.